Hi, everybody. How are you doing? I wanted to come on here and do a little live because I wasn't sure if this was going to arrive to me in time, but it has. And so I didn't have time to do a full video, so I thought live was going to be the best way to let all of you know about this amazing wine. So I guess before we get started, I should preface this with, if you guys saw the video that I did on yesterday, which is that crazy, I think it was like $600 cab for like 35 or 40 bucks. This is going to, and you missed it, or if you got it and you're like, darn it, I wish I got more. This is going to be the next thing that you should definitely grab. So this is the Editorial 2018. And so I'll back up a little bit to tell you what this wine is if you missed the whole situation from before. So this is a private label or custom cuvee from Wine Access. And essentially what happens is these big vineyards or wineries have too much fruit. There's a few different reasons why it might happen, but they have too much fruit. And so they make that fruit available to someone like Wine Access, who then in turn takes it and either bottles it themselves or buys it already made. So it just kind of depends on the situation. But in any case, you're usually getting a premium wine for a fraction of the price. And so as a consumer, it's a great way to find these amazing wines that could be hundreds of dollars for literally like 30 or 40 bucks. And so every time that happens, I get super excited and I bring them to you, and hopefully you'll get excited. But the last one that we did was the yesterday wine. The one before that was Radio Silence. Now we've got Editorial. So I'd say about every month, every like 3 to 4 weeks, something new kind of hits the market. 2018, to kind of go back to that vintage, it was a massive, massive crop in Napa Valley. And this is 100% Napa Valley fruit. This is all coming from Coombsville, and it is coming from a single vineyard, premium vineyard in Coombsville. So what they can tell you, because they can't give you a lot of the details, that's part of the deal, right? So they can tell you little like hints about where this wine is coming from, who's sourcing there, but they can't tell you who it is. And so that's sort of the way that these contracts work. It's under a heavy NDA. And so this wine, this vineyard has been the source of fruit for some pretty amazing winemakers like Helen Turley. It is regularly used by Pahlmeyer. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, since it is from Coombsville, this is more than likely some sort of like single vineyard maybe. And then also Joseph Phelps. So this was a vineyard regularly used for Insignia. So, and then a whole bunch of others that preferred not to be named, or we couldn't name, or Wine Access couldn't name. So there is some real pedigree of this vineyard. And this is coming from Coombsville. So this is one of the more southern AVAs in Napa Valley. This is also Coombsville's super cool. It's really on the cooler side of the AVAs, and why I like it is because one, the fruit tends to not be quite as robust and super, super ripe. It always tends to have a little bit more of like a dark profile, a little bit more minerality, and then just a little bit more brightness. So the Radio Silence wine that that maybe you tried before, maybe you didn't, or maybe you watched me try it, big, broad, inky, massive, massive fruit, like a huge bomb of a wine. It was black fruits, purple fruits, really intense, a little bit of a touch of savory. And then the yesterday wine, that leaned more on the red fruits. That had a ton of oak characteristics. So a lot of vanilla and baking spices, really round, really lush, really intense. This is a slightly different profile, and I really, really like it. I think you guys are going to be really excited about it too, because it sort of rounds out the portfolio, I think, of what was maybe missing from those three. So you had, the big opulent black fruited Radio Silence, the red fruited, really like tasted like a inside of a Bentley yesterday. And then you have this wine, which just smells of really beautiful, like plump, bouncy black fruit, but so much minerality. So I get tons of like volcanic earth in here. I get a lot of like limestone minerality, which this is coming from Coombsville. Coombsville is a caldera, so it's literally like a volcano that like sunk in on itself. So if you looked at Coombsville from the sky, you would see that Coombsville is literally like this sort of like bowl-shaped dip that exists in Napa Valley, and it's just nothing but compressed volcanic soil from millions and millions of years of it just sort of compressing upon itself. So I am not a geologist, so if you are a geologist and you're like, that's not true, put it on the comments. But my general understanding is that that's sort of how it works. But anyway, I always find that these wines are really, really laden with minerality. So if you like wines that have more of that, just like a brightness, like a lift to them, but you want that intensity, this is going to be for you. So on the nose, like I said, black fruits, tons of minerality, that sort of like limestone, volcanic soil. I get a little bit of like eucalyptus and herb on here as well. So I get tons of rosemary. And I get, there is like a mintiness. It's really, really subtle. It's not, something you would expect from like a Heitz Martha's. It's certainly not, big over the top, like Spring Mountain greening eucalyptus, but it's there. It's just very subtle. But the rosemary, that sort of like sweet, herbaceous, herby thing, that's there as well. Prime focus of the nose of this wine is going to be black fruits and purple fruits. And I think it's just like jumping out the glass. This is a 2018. It just arrived to me on Friday, so I waited 2 days to open it. If you guys are planning on buying these wines, I should note, because I got a lot of DMs from people who were super excited about the radio silence, super excited about the yesterday. Should I wait? Can I pop into it? Yeah, I mean, like, give it a minute to settle down. Wine, anytime it travels, it's gonna suffer a little bit. Like, it needs a minute to just relax. So do give it some time before you crack those wines if you can. If you can, no big deal. Let's give it the palate. So gorgeous. Totally, totally different profile from the other two wines that I talked about. Just like gushing with this rich black and purple fruit still, but all of that minerality and lift. It is a gorgeous layered, you can tell that this is all about the fruit. This is all about pedigree. You're finding very, very little new French oak on this, which I really like, because you can feel how quality the fruit in this vineyard is. Rachel, you're still waiting for your yesterday to arrive. Patience is a virtue, my friend. I promise you, when it does arrive, you will not be disappointed. Everyone that I've talked to so far, I obviously tasted the wine, but everyone that has gotten their wine, and I'm talking countless DMs, has DM'd me to tell me how much they love it. So I'm really excited for when you get it. And if you guys out there have gotten your yesterday or your radio silence, shoot me a message in the comments, DM me on Instagram. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I think, the Editorial, this is $40 at the top level, $40 at the single bottle level. Then it drops down to $35 on a case buy. So $35. And then in the link in my description below, there's a $50 off, $150 for first time purchasers on Wine Access. So that gets you that gets you to that case buy a little easier, I think. Wow, this wine, I can still taste it. If you love wines that are, really, really super plushy and like feels like they're a little bit more overripe, so kind of jammy, this is actually probably not going to be your scene. This to me drinks slightly more old world, which is in line with how Coombsville normally drinks. It's a cooler region, so the fruits don't get super over the top ripe. You can certainly find some examples here and there, but I always find a sense of restraint with these wines, which is really why I love them. I think from an ageability standpoint, these wines from this area, this particular region in Napa Valley, are just so incredibly age-worthy. And if it's from the vineyard that I think it is, I've had vintages of this back to 1989, 1988, and they are stunning wines. Beautiful, age-worthy, graceful, lithe wines. But this wine is decadent and it's intense and it's a mouthful, but it's got tannin in a way that the other two didn't. And I think it's a combination of tannin and minerality. So a lot of tannin coming from the grapes, because I think, you've got maybe slightly thicker skins. But then there's also this minerality here that sort of makes you think that it's tannin. It's just slightly drying on the palate. I would throw a ribeye at this so fast, because it's got, just the right amount of acidity, a little bit of grippy tannin in a good way. So if you're someone that really doesn't love these big opulent Napa Cabs, but you're someone that normally gravitates towards places like Italy, if you love bigger Barolos, if you love even some Bordeaux to some extent, although I think this is a little bit more black fruited than you're used to seeing in Bordeaux. But I think this wine leans a little bit more on the old world style. It is so unbelievably quality. I actually can't believe, like, even as I'm tasting it now, I keep going back to it like, wait, how much is this? This could easily be like a $45 glass pour at a restaurant. I mean, it is like super, super layered and nuanced and rich. And like I said, like this has tannin, this has, like silty, very granular sandy tannins. So, not big mountain chewy ones, but like ones that you would maybe, what a good example of it is if you've ever had Cabernet from this is super specific, Cabernet from the east side of Oakville, kind of up in the hillside, Dalla Valle, Terra Roja, even like Screaming Eagle, that leans more on the red profile, but texturally, this is kind of where we're at. And I think quality, this is where we're at. So Wine Access advertising this wine, $279 is what the normal-ish purchase price for the wine that what it is, made from this same vineyard. It's coming down to $40 and then down even further to $35. Who's got questions? What questions do we have? Now it's starting to come out a little bit more of like these violety flowers. It smells a little like Spotswood just down the street from me right now. But yeah, a little bit of violet. It's interesting. The rosemary has sort of like taken off. And now all these like purple flowers, violets, this blackberry, boysenberry. It doesn't, it's not so, it is a little cassisi, but like, more on like the tart side of things. Gosh, I just love this so much. I would be very, I'm going to decant this really, really quick because I want to see what happens with just like a tiny amount of air to see if these tannins, sort of resolve themselves a little bit. So I'm just going to do a quick decant. This is a super, super rough decant. So we're just trying to get a little oxygen into this wine, see if it changes. This is not something I normally do, but I just kind of want to just see what would happen. So let's see. Grab a different glass. And these are my Mark Thomas glasses, in case anyone's wondering. I have gotten a few comments about what glassware I'm using. And this is a new Mark Thomas decanter. This fits a full Magnum. Let's see if this changes. Zachary, the last bottle of Napa Colt was too much tobacco for me. Is this well balanced right now? Too much tobacco. Interesting. I don't get any tobacco in this wine. In fact, this definitely leans more black and purple fruited. I don't really get any of that like leather, saddle, spice, tobacco, things that you normally would get with like a Cabernet Franc edition or gosh, who else? Mountain fruits can sometimes give you a little bit of that. Certainly wineries like Dunn up on Howe Mountain. I'm not getting any of this. And in fact, I'm not, the yesterday wine. No, that leaned more red fruited. I don't, I think the tobacco, was it more baking spices? Cause I feel like, the yesterday wine had a ton of New French oak on it. That was like really, really vanilla, really cardamom, clove. I could totally see like, tobacco being part of that complex. This leans way more like precise fruit. So think like, Barolo, think like, really, really linear focused wine. So it doesn't have the amount of New French oak that I felt like the yesterday had. And I think for some people looking for, that really rich, round, plush, like literally it feels like it's licking the inside of like a Bentley or something. Actually, that's not literal, but it just felt like it had so much expensive New French oak, which I thought, was a good thing to an extent. This is like sort of polar opposite. So this reminds me, if you've ever had like Mayacamas, more of that like precision, focus, less new oak, all about the terroir, all about the soil, all about the grape. This is far more like purple, red fruited, and super, super focused. I think honestly, this is the best example I can give you. This is if you've ever had any of the great producers from Coombsville, I think D. Costanzo is a great example. Farella Vineyard is wonderful. Realm makes a Farella Vineyard. And then also like up on Mount Veeder tends to be more red fruited than it does purple fruited, but it also tends to have the intensity and the structure that this wine has. So this totally reminds me of a brand new baby Mayacamas. I think that's the best example I can give you. So, away from some of those cult cabs that really lean heavy into their oak regimen and more into like old school style producers, if that makes sense. Oh yeah, that totally opened it up. So those grippier, sandier tannins, yeah, I'm just getting the tannins now. So after I had just opened this right before this, I threw it in the decanter, gave it a little air because I just wanted to see what it was going to do, if those tannins were going to start to resolve themselves, and they are. The tannins are not harsh. They are very sandy tannins, but they're there. I mean, this isn't like, it's not what I would consider, silky, just kind of like glazes across your palate. Like I felt like the yesterday wine was like just a wine that kind of like across, like it was really just moved. I don't think these are harsh tannins. I think these are really fine integrated tannins, but they're there. And I think as this wine is opening, they're starting to resolve themselves and they're starting to come down just a little bit. Let me taste again. I mean, keep in mind, I've had 6 or 7 sips of this wine. Tannin, tends to, your mouth tends to adjust to it by this point, but I do see a fairly big difference in the amount of tannin that I'm feeling from this wine after I gave it like a quick decant. It was only decanted for all of about 2 minutes. I did a rough decant, but I do think this, serving wise, this was recommended about 30 minutes in decanter. I do think this is a wine, if tannins not your jam, if you don't want to feel that textural pull, that the dryness in your mouth, throw it in a decanter for 30 minutes and like let it resolve itself there. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I still think you're going to get that really beautiful, precise fruit, if that makes sense. Man, do I have purple teeth already? I do. Wow, super inky. Look at this color. Ooh. See if you guys can see this. This color is like super, super purple. And again, like I think these are all textbook Coombsville characteristics. Like if I were to blind taste, I actually might call Mount Veeder over Coombsville just based on the tannin. But again, I think like this is also what's maybe leading me to this one particular vineyard, because this vineyard tends to be the most intense of some of the vineyards that I've had from Coombsville. I'm really excited about Coombsville. I know it's not a vineyard, an AVA that is, sort of has the cachet that like Oakville or St. Helena or Rutherford has, but it's also just like from a historical perspective, Coombsville has always been a vineyard that has gone into some of the best Cabernets Napa Valley has ever seen. It's sort of always flown under the radar. You think about some of these guys that have been farming these vineyards for decades, since the 70s. And this was really land that was pretty much untouched. You think of Coombsville now, it's where you can find real estate for the least amount of, or vineyard real estate for the least amount of money. But it's where a lot of the younger winemakers are going, one, because it's less expensive. And then two, because, it is a cooler site. So you're getting more freshness, you're getting more vibrancy, you're getting more acidity to some degree. And so when you're dealing with some of these, more central valley floor vineyards that are exposed to more sunlight, you're definitely getting riper grapes And you don't necessarily have it's not a consistent soil type, but you definitely get more volcanic soils, tufa soils in Coombsville. And so I think, to some degree, and there's many schools of thought on this, to some degree, you're getting layers of minerality and nuance that you wouldn't normally get on some of these other sites. I think the best, like I said, the best examples that I can give you are really great vineyard sites like Mayacamas up on Mount Veeder, and then also the eastern sort of more like mountainside vineyards of Oakville that really, you get more of that like red terracotta over on that side. But again, like you get these like fine sandy tannins. And it's interesting because Joseph Phelps is said to pull from this vineyard for its Insignia cuvee. And I think it's interesting because to me, this feels very Bacchus-like. So if you've ever had the Bacchus single vineyard bottling from Joseph Phelps, which is in Oakville on the eastern side of the valley, structurally very, very similarly profiled. So I think it's interesting they're pulling from both of those sites. Bacchus, yeah, Zachary. I mean, Bacchus is, to me, of the Phelps wines that they make, Bacchus has always been my favorite, with the exception being Islay, which they stopped producing in 1990, 91. Yeah, I think of the Phelps lineup, Bacchus has always been my favorite. This to me is very Bacchus-like. So if you're fine with those Bacchus tannins, you're going to be just fine with this. And like, I think to some degree, you think about that little area there. You've got Red, you've got Sweeney Eagle, you've got Della Valle, you've got Bacchus, very, very interesting, nuanced, beautiful vineyards that are there that I don't think are unlike what we're tasting in this glass. So yeah, Islay is special, man. Islay, I don't think there's anywhere quite as special as Islay. I think if I had to pick a favorite vineyard in Napa Valley, it would be Islay. There's just something so special and magical about those wines. Yeah, and if you've never had those wines, so they were, maybe you know them as a Rajo. So that used to be a Rajo. So the history of Islay was owned by one family for years. They leased or they sold the grapes to Phelps starting about 1975. Phelps was the only one to make that wine from 1975 to 1991 until that vineyard was sold to Bart and Daphne Arajo, who owned it until about 2011, 2012. And now the owners of Chateau Latour own that vineyard and winery and make wine for what is now just called the Islay wine or Islay label. It's just so amazing. Try to visit all the time. Yeah, good for you. Promontory is the most amazing wine you've ever had. Okay, if you love Promontory, this is okay. So where Promontory, this will be totally your jam. Promontory is a great example. So those tannins, you've had Promontory, those are not what I would consider like silky soft tannins. There's tannin in that wine. That's a really cool vineyard to visit, by the way. They only took us around there once. It's massive, it's huge, it's rugged, it's wild. This is very, very close in style to a Promontory. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of what this wine is drinking like. So like Promontory, they're using concrete, they're using stainless steel, they're using oak, they're using those big Austrian casks. I think that's a great example of texturally where this wine is at. I mean, the tannins are still there. I'm still getting dryness. I think it's a good thing though, and I think it's just a wine that really loves food. So, all right, well, the AC is off, so I'm a little hot. Again, this is I don't think I said this that many times, this is the Editorial. And do keep in mind, there are several vintages, not several, there's one other vintage, I think, in the actual store in Wine Access. So just to give you a quick little rundown of how things work at Wine Access, you have the Wine Access offers, and then you have the Wine Access store. So the store wines are ready to ship now, meaning you can put them in their cart and they're going to ship the next day or maybe even same day if you order early enough. The offer wines are essentially pre-sales. So this wine, the 2018, the Yesterday, the Radio Silence, those are wines that they sort of sell ahead of time, and then they'll ship usually anywhere from like 2 weeks to maybe a month later, depending on where that wine is in transit. Sometimes they're direct import, sometimes it's coming over from Europe. It just depends what it is. So do keep in mind, today we are talking about the 2018 Editorial Cabernet Sauvignon, not the 17, which I believe is still in the store right now. So just there is a difference. I've had the other vintages of Editorial and they're not the same. And if you've had the other vintages of Editorial, especially the 16, totally different profile, bigger, broader, plusher, more chocolatey, more of that like mocha espresso, a little richer. This version is almost not polar opposite, but definitely a departure from that 16 and the 17 vintage. So I hope you all will run and go grab this because, like I said, these are limited time offers. They don't stick around forever. There's only so much produced, and I figured I would bring it to you guys first before I go anywhere else. So hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see y'all soon. Bye.